Hey everyone, let's see the microphone. Hey everyone, welcome to the next part of the top 10, of the top 100. I'm Petter, and this is Melton Meeples. This is a YouTube channel all about board games, solo board games. I normally don't do much introduction, but I really should start getting better at that. So, I'm currently going through my top 100 games of all time, the 2021 edition. This week is the start of the top half. So I'm going 10 games at a time, and this chunk has 4 new games to the list that were not there previously in 2020's list. So, I'm continuing with my old fashions. This one has rhubarb bitters in it, which I know I've done before. I'm not sure as part of the top 100, but I really like the flavor of rhubarb in general. It's a nice bitter taste that I enjoy, and I enjoy bitters in a good old fashioned, so this was a pretty easy choice for the bitters for today's old-fashioned. But let's get to this list. So number 50 is a new one to the list. And this is a roll and write game. So I played a lot of roll and write games over the past year or so because a lot of them can be played solo. Or they're easy to learn games, so I can play them with almost anyone. Or the bigger thing is I could play a number of them on Zoom. And I could, on Board Game Geek, find a lot of different downloads of different boards so that I could play with whoever, because all they had to do was be able to print off a copy of the board. I could point a camera at the dice, the cards, whatever it was, and we could play. This is one of them that we didn't necessarily play that many times, but that I really enjoy. And it's a little bit of I won't want to call it like a brain-burny one, but Railroad Inc. is a really fun one where you're trying to connect different endpoints, so railroad or roads, together, and basically see how long roads you can get, how many of those different points you can get connected, how many spots you can fill in the middle of the board. Like, it's a 9x9 board, so, or is it 9x9, or is it, might be 7x7 board. Let me see. 7x7 board, I think. And it's just a lot of fun. It works well, and you're rolling 4 dice, and you have to put all those different routes down. Now, there are expansions for this as well that I really haven't even started to dig into yet, and those expansions just add little things. Like, for this Blazing Red edition, you might be adding a volcano in, or something like that. And the game is a nice balance of plenty of stuff to think about. There's plenty of luck to it, but you can strategize and do well if you're trying, or if you're paying attention, because you can set yourself up for success connecting all sorts of different routes together. So this one, like I said, was new last year, number 50 this year. I'll be curious to see with all the roll and writes I have, where this one potentially lands on a list in the long run. Is it going to be one that stays this high, or because there are some other roll and writes that do similar things, is this one going to beat those out, or what is that going to look like? Then at number 49, we have one that dropped all the way from 21 to 49. And this one is a cooperative game that really intentionally tries to keep the alpha player cooperative issue from happening. Now, I'm a firm believer that alpha player problem generally means that you have a player problem with whoever's the alpha player versus anything that the game is potentially doing wrong. But Lost Expedition covers that up. Like it makes it so it isn't possible completely. Because you have a hand of, normally I think it's 4 cards, depending on player count, it could be more or less. And you're playing out those cards into an order of stuff without being able to talk about what's in your hand. And these cards have different things that might allow you to kind of advance on your expedition to the lost city of Z, or it might be something that gives you, maybe it gives you a food, maybe it gives you a couple bullets, or maybe you have to spend a bullet because otherwise your guides, you'd be damaging your guides. There's all sorts of different things. And most of the time, it's not great, and you're having to make tough decisions on how you want to kind of traverse all these cards, because all 4 of these cards in your hand are going to get played out. 2 of them get played out in the morning, 2 of them get played out in the evening. And in the morning, you can strategize a little bit more. Now, you can't talk about what's on your cards, but you can look at what's been played and say, all the cards have numbers on them. So say I have a 58, somebody else has a 53. They play down that 53. It has a skip. Like, one of the things you can do is skip the next card. And 58 is a really lousy card. I can look and go like, okay, if I do, they have 53, I can do 58. 58 is going to be the card that's skipped. And you can kind of strategize a little with that, unless somebody, of course, slots something in there in between the 2 of them numerically, because you don't go, so in, let's say, a 4-player game, you don't start working through all the cards for the day until all 8 are down in numerical order. And then you have to, as a group, kind of figure out the puzzle of how to get through all of those, spending as little food, health, other resources as possible. But then in the evening, you go on another walk, and you're using those last 2 cards in your hand. You don't draw up anymore. You're putting them down, and you're putting them down in the order that people play them. So not numerical order, but if it's my turn, I put a card down. The next person's card always goes after mine. And that means that sometimes you can't strategize. Like, I might just have 2 really lousy cards, or I might have a card that has a skip on it, and now you were holding back a good card, and now you're looking at it and go like, well, I have 1 card left to play down, so I'm going to have to play this one down, and it's going to get skipped, and that sucks. So there's a balance between all of that. And I'm going to try and stop bumping the table, but it just makes a really nice game. I think the reason it's a bit further down on the list for me this year is just I've played this one a lot. There's an expansion that adds some fun stuff like a werewolf or like the Fountain of Youth to it, but I've still played it a bunch. And it's going to be one that I continue to play, but maybe won't be that top 20 game or top 30 game anymore for me, just because I've seen a lot of what it does. Then we go to a classic game. This one was 57 last year, up to 48 this year, even though I haven't played it, but I still really like it because of the Mancala movement of meeples. And just with that, you can probably guess what it is. It is 5 Tribes. 5 Tribes is just a really good, like, modern classic at this point, with the set collection of cards, the Mancala style movement, and getting points for like removing the last meeples from a location, getting those points off of that. It just works. And this game actually works extremely well at 2 players too, because of kind of the turn order bidding. Most of the time you don't want to bid much, if at all, but At 2 players, you each have 2 turns per round, and it's possible that if I see 2 really good moves that I want for my strategy, I will bid fairly high to get the first turn and then the second turn. But if I'm bidding higher, you potentially know that there's going to be a really good move out there, and everybody can see the board. And generally, a good move for one person is a pretty good move for everybody else, because this is very much a point salad type game where you get points for everything. There's a whole lot going on in it, but a lot of fun, and just probably one of the classics that I keep on, that I would gladly play every time somebody wants to. Like, not making the list are going to actually be like Pandemic. I don't think that made the list. I think that's just off. Ticket to Ride or Catan, which I've played them a lot, and I'm not sure that I'm always going to want to play them. They're really good games still, but 5 tribes, and I think there's... I have to look at my list here quick. And then my number 75, which was Small World, that one is another one that I'm just basically always going to be ready to play those classic or modern classics at this point. Not necessarily all of them. And next up, this is another new one to list at 47, is the game that I possibly have the most content for sure the most playable characters for, and I have even more coming for it from a second Kickstarter. And this is a game that should be, or that should eventually become a modern classic in my opinion, because it's such a simple cooperative game with a theme that most people like, and that's going to be Marvel United. This game might be in the base box, which you can see up here, might be a little bit simple, but I think just with the one expansion that they had come out at, which I believe was Enter the Spider-Verse, if I remember correctly, just with that, I think there's enough content for a lot of people to have a lot of fun with this game, because, I mean, it's a Marvel theme, and obviously I love Marvel. I have a Marvel podcast, 10 Minute Marvel. You can find information about that down below. But this game is so much fun because I do have 20 some bad guys and 50 heroes, something like that. So if I want to play Beta Ray Bill, Squirrel Girl, and Captain America against Red Skull, I can do that. Or if I want to have the Guardians of the Galaxy members face off against Ronan, I can do that. I can go as close to the movies as I want, or I can go with something completely absurd. There's nothing that's really stopping me from doing any of those things, and it doesn't make it take any longer. It's not like me deciding that I want to do these weird characters against Red Skull instead of Captain America takes any extra setup. I just grab the cards for the villain figure, the cards for my character, everybody grabs the cards for their character, and you're basically ready to go. There's a little bit more setup than that, but I mean, not that long ago, I think, well, 2 weeks ago, just over, I played, I want to say 5 games in the span of an hour and a half. Granted, one of the games only lasted about 5 minutes because, well, the villain got really lucky and took us out immediately, but it's a lot of fun, really simple, not that much text even on like the character cards. So as long as one player can read, this is a very family accessible game. And yeah, Studio Laniston is saying that they're finding that the minis are fun to paint. Because, yeah, even though that's not his normal style. If you want to see some of what he's painted, I don't have the link for it on my channel because it's another channel's Discord, but the Glory Hound Discord, if you search for Glory Hound on YouTube, they have a Discord, and Studio Lanniston posted today a couple of Hulks that he painted, which looked very nice, which I really need to try my hand at painting because I really want to paint my Marvel United characters. So, don't inhale whiskey fumes. Number 46 is going to be one that actually dropped down from 22 and has been on my list since I played a demo of it, though it was a full game, basically, at Gen Con in 2019, and I just got it back to the table a month or 2 months ago, basically. And this is going to be a horror-themed game where you are all cursed, trying to solve your curses and get out of this cursed town before the end of the first day or the third day, whatever the scenario says. And this is a competitive game, so it's possible to have multiple people win at the same time, but in Deranged, it's more about if you can win yourself. First off, I just love the artwork on the cover of this game, and the artwork as a whole, it just works for me. It feels kind of like that, it feels like comic book artwork. Not necessarily superhero comic book artwork, but like comic book artwork, and it's just a lot of fun. It's simple enough, but it offers really clever things to do, because on your turn you're playing down a card and you're taking an action off of that. You might have like 3 different actions on it, or I think you take 2 actions off of it if you want, but like taking a second action makes you go insane, and you have health. You're going around these different places. There are monsters that show up on the board, but then the big thing is when it flips from daytime to nighttime, every character, every person has a card that says whether or not they're normal human or not, and if you're not, you become deranged. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't win the game anymore. It doesn't even mean that you can't be a normal human anymore. But you have to track somebody down and kill them. And then that sends them to the graveyard, gives them another curse, and it allows you to come back to a player who can actually win the game. You're a human again. And the other clever thing is, like I was talking about, you have these cards that have these actions. Well, when you become deranged, you take your hand of cards, you flip it upside down, and on the bottom of the cards are the actions the deranged can take, and that I think is just going to be move, attack, and defense, and you can use all of those actions just by playing down one card. So it works well. This one is one I think a lot of people would enjoy, but just due to poor timing as to when it came out. And I mean, it was also delayed too when it came out. So delayed prior to like all the big delays with shipping and stuff now. Ultra Pro, who brought it over to the US, it took forever for it to get here. Quality is fine to good on it, but if you can track this one down, it is a lot of fun. Then number 32 last year, 45 this year, is going to be a game that I always compare to Roll and Writes. It is not itself a Roll and Write, but currently it is my favorite game, I believe, with dinosaurs. And it is. Had to look at the list, But Draftasaurus is a lot of fun. So there's no real turns, but every time you roll a die, it moves who's rolling the die. That person rolls a die, and that determines where your opponents can place dinosaurs. So it can be the top half or bottom half of the board, left half or right half of the board for them. But you, as the person who rolled the die, can break the rule. And you're drafting 2 dinosaurs out of a handful of dinosaur meeples and putting them on the board. And you score points by filling out different dinosaur pens in different ways. There's one where it scores points if all the dinosaurs are different, or for however many different dinosaurs you have in there, different types. There's others that score points for how many pairs of dinosaurs you have in those pens. There's another one that scores points if that dinosaur is the only dinosaur of its type on the board. So it's just a pen that holds one thing, and you score like 8 points or something like that if it's there. And I have a couple more expansions for it that I haven't played with yet, for underwater and in the air. Just a really fun game that's really simple to play. I want to say a game takes 15 to 20 minutes, and then you can flip over and play the other side of the board and total up between the two to see who did the best overall, or just play it once, or just play the same side of the board multiple times. The only knock I have on this game is that it doesn't come with a score pad. It would be really nice if this came with a score pad. And they have, I believe it's 6 pens on both boards. So just give me a score pad that has pen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and river. River, you can always just put a dinosaur in there and it scores you 1 point. But it'd be easy enough, and it'd make it so much easier for scoring instead of just kind of having to keep track of your score in your head, or if you don't fully understand scoring, for the person who does to have to go through, look at your score, tell you it, hope you remember it. But that's a small nitpick, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody does have a score sheet for it on Board Game Geek, so I may at some point in time spend a little bit of time tracking that down and just print one off and laminate it so that I have one ready to go. Number 44 dropped from 27 last year, and this is one that I know that I'm kind of the big herald for it. And this one is from, if I remember correctly, this is AEG, and it is a small box card game that takes a chunk of time to play, but can play a very high number of players, where you're going to be samurai who are trying to who are preparing to take out villains, and that is say bye to the villains. This one is a fully cooperative game that I think it works really well. I've probably played this 20 times, approximately, 15 to 20, I would say. I have yet to defeat this game. Now, I've gotten close with people multiple times, but it is tricky because there's a number of things that you're trying to balance out doing. So each samurai has their own special ability, though one doesn't, and they just have better starting stats. And so you're trying to play down cards that kind of work to your advantage, and then you only have 10 days to do that, and cards will have different values on them. So some of the best cards are, it's a 4-cost card, 4 days worth of time, I can deal infinite damage. That means no matter what, I'm going to be able to defeat the villain I'm up against, for better or worse, because The villains have cards as well. Those cards are face down. Those are kind of set for them. No matter what's happening, these are the cards they're going to flip. And you can spend time peeking at those cards. And sometimes you're like, well, this guy's going to be fairly tough. You can do infinite damage. You can probably go before them. So why don't you match up against them? Because only one samurai matches up against one villain. But then you flip over a card from that villain's row that you hadn't gotten a chance to look at because looking at those cards takes time. And now all of a sudden you needed to draw against that villain instead of kill them, which has happened before. And if you're doing infinite damage, there's no way to avoid killing that villain. The game is a lot of fun, really tough to win. Probably, like I said, I probably played 15 times. 12 of those times or 11 of those times, all but one person has been able to defeat their villain or get that draw with their villain, whatever they needed to do. And that one last person, just because we couldn't check quite everything for the villains, loses. Or they defeat a villain who needed to have a draw against them. It helps that I have another friend who really likes this game as well. So it means we can get it to the table more often. And I think he's in the same boat as me. He might have played it as many times or maybe more. And I don't think he's beaten the game either. I know that's probably going to be something that some people won't like. But for me, it works. And eventually, I will say bye to the villains. My number 44. So number 43 this year was also number 43 last year. And this is the game that kind of killed Splendor for me. And they're different enough that, I still have both in my collection, and my wife likes Splendor a lot. So that's some of the reason why that one has stayed. But I really like this game because of kind of the engine building you can do with your hand of cards and swapping out all sorts of gems. And I could have put Century Spice Road. I just don't have that version of the game. I have Century Golem Edition with great Golem artwork, amazing gems, and it's just a more fun theme to me than trading spice. But this game has you having a hand of cards. This is my symbol for a hand of cards, apparently. Or that, I think I've done. But you have your hand of cards and you're playing down cards. These cards will either get you new gems or allows you to swap gems around, upgrading them. It might take a really good gem, one I think pink is the highest, and you could change that into like 3 other gems. And it's all about building up this gem manipulation machine with the cards in your hand so that you can get the right gems to get a golem. But the game plays super snappy, fast, because you're either adding a card to your hand, which might be free if you take the first card, or might cost you a few gems if you're taking one further down the road. That's one thing you can do on your turn. Or another turn might be you play down a card and you do whatever that card says, whether it gets you more gems or swaps out other gems. It works well because it's only one thing ever on a turn. And eventually you're like, well, I don't have any cards left in my hand, or I don't have any cards left in my hand that I want to play. So now my turn is just picking up all the cards that I've played. Works really well and is easy to teach once you get the basics of the game down. A lot of fun and a really fun theme and table presence. So one that I highly recommend for more gaming with more casual people, Century Golem Edition. All right, that takes us, and I said at the beginning there were 4 new ones. We're down to 2 left for this chunk of the list. So number 42 and 41 are both going to be new games. And this one is a sweet looking game that is way tougher and thinkier, in some ways even meaner than you might think based off of its looks, and that's going to be Calico. This is a game about cats and quilts, and about making a calico quilt to get cats to sleep on it. So, Dice Tower at Gen Con did a top 10 list of game names that weren't great, and they put one of them put Calico on the list, even though Calico is I think it was the Gen Con list, but either way, Calico is the type of quilt that you see on that cover, even though that is not a calico cat, and they could have done Calico in 2 ways. But this game is a lot of fun because it's another one of those games that is simple to play. It's fairly abstract in what it's doing, but it works really well. On your turn, you're playing one of 2 tiles you have in front of you onto your quilt. And then you're taking one of 3 tiles in the middle to fill back up your hand of tiles. That's simple enough, but you score points in a lot of different ways. Cats, since a lot of cats are colorblind, don't care about the color of anything, but they want certain collections of patterns in a certain order. It might be just a group of 6 of, like there's a leafy pattern. They might just want 6 squares next to each other, or hexes next to each other of the leafy pattern. You do that, you will have that cat come to your bed or to your quilt, and that's going to give you some points. Then there are buttons, and buttons go where you have colors grouped together. So if you have 3 yellows, you get a yellow button. And buttons are worth a few points. They're easier to do them and to get on your quilt than the cats. But those 2 things can be at odds with each other because there's only so many quilt blocks of a given pattern and color. So you're looking for specific things. And then you add in that everybody has 3 different scoring tiles in their quilt. And some of them are easier. It might be you get 5 points if you have 3 blocks of one color and 3 blocks of another color around it. But you can get 12 points, let's say, if you have 3 blocks of one color, 3 blocks of another color, 3 blocks of one pattern, 3 blocks of another pattern around that scoring block. And that's an easy one. Some of them want 3, 2, 1, or 2, 1, or 2, 2, 2, or everything different. So, and they share too. So there's a lot of fun things that go on with the scoring in this game that make it really thinky. And you can a little bit ignore maybe one of them. Like, you can't completely ignore it, but maybe getting buttons isn't the most important thing. You get them when you can, but getting buttons is not your strategy. And you can do well in the game, but if you completely ignore it, you're going to run into trouble. And where this can become a bit mean is, especially towards the end of the game, you are looking for very specific tiles. And there's only so many of them in the bag. And if it's drawn out, and I always make it so that when you take the tile from the group of 3, you have to replace it, and you as the person who took it replaces it from the bag. Because too often it seems like you're drawing out a tile that you really want, and now you're hoping that nobody takes it in the next 3 people, or 2 people, or whatever, 1 person even. The next person doesn't take it so that it gets back to you, so you can get that specific tile you need, probably to complete a couple different scoring objectives. It works really well, and it's really easy to teach. And then finally, this one I can see shifting over time. I've only played it solo, but as a roll and write, and there's no like die drafting or anything like that, so a solo experience is not going to be massively different than a regular experience with it. But this is a fun roll and write game where you are building out a floor plan, and the name is floorplan. What you roll with the dice determines either the size of room you're adding to the floor plan or different features you're adding to your floor plan, whether it's furniture or deck outside or pool, whatever it might be. You're doing this based off of the whatever was rolled. And in solo, you have a certain number of rounds to see how well you can score. But it's kind of absurd because you might end up with a house that has like 6 living rooms in it. Now, that's very improbable, but depending on the scoring objectives, it might prioritize you building a few more living rooms, or it might be that you have rooms in your house that just don't have a door into them. Or they only have a door from the outside into, say, the kitchen, and the rest of the house might be connected, but the only way to the kitchen is to go around outside. Weird stuff like that. Or you have a giant bathroom. Because I think like a bathroom, if I remember correctly, is like a 1. So if you use a 1 and a 6, you can make that into a really long and narrow bathroom or a really long and narrow living room. It's goofy, it's fun, it works well. The one reason I'm wondering if this will stick is that they are doing a second version of this with the Winchester Mansion, if I remember, I believe it's Winchester, the gun manufacturer. The widow of the original Winchester, she was crazy and thought that her place was being haunted by the ghosts of the people who those guns had killed, if I remember correctly from the story. And this is an actual place where like there's stairs that, because of how the perspective looks, it looks like it just goes up, but it gets smaller as you go up. Or there's windows that to nothing, or doors to nothing, stairs that lead nowhere. A completely messed up place that she just continually added on to keep the ghosts at bay. And they're doing a version of floor plan with that. And I kind of suspect that might bump regular floor plan for me, because like my knock on this game would be that while it's a ton of fun, I wish it was more like making an actual floor plan. Like you had more requirements of an actual house that you needed to complete for points. The various scoring objectives work well, and the fact that they change up works well, but I wish there was like some fixed scoring on this instead of only really being the variable scoring, so that you have to, like, you score points, more points if you have these certain types of rooms all connected by doors. Like you have to have a kitchen, a dining room, a living room, and a bedroom and a bathroom all with doors. If you did that, I think the game would work a little bit better for me. But with the Winchester Mansion, I think it could be a lot of fun even without that, because, well, I mean, that's a crazy building. So, there we have it. That is number 41. We have 4 more weeks left to get through the next 40. And so next week will be 40 through 31. Let me quickly run through these again. I like to at the end, just in case anybody missed the beginning of it. We have at number 50, Railroad Inc., a fun roll and write about connecting routes. Then at 49, we have the Lost Expedition, a cooperative exploration type game, really more of a resource management type game, where you are trying to find the lost city of Z and running out of resources and dealing with all sorts of crazy things that are happening along the route in a package that is very small and not alpha gamer friendly. Then at number 48, we have a modern classic, 5 Tribes. This one is kind of a Mancala style game where everything gives you points. A lot of fun. At number 47, we have another cooperative game, Marvel United. This one is about taking a team of superheroes and fighting against a bad guy. And if you went in on either of the Kickstarters, you're going to have so many heroes. And I went in on both of them, so I have so many heroes and so many villains. Well, eventually I'll have so many villains. Marvel United X-Men has not fully delivered all of the expansion stuff yet, which is just fine because there's still so much content to get through. At number 46, we have Deranged, a game about trying to break your curses so that you can get out of town, but it's a competitive game. Everybody's trying to break their curses, and at some point in time, somebody will become deranged, and then they'll be trying to hunt down and kill other players so that they can become not deranged and continue and try and win and get rid of their own curses. Then at 45, we have Draftasaurus. This is a Dino Meeple drafting game that plays really fast and like a roll and write, with you filling in your Dino Meeples into all sorts of pens that give you points. At number 44, we have a game that I have never beaten, and that is Say Bye to the Villains. This is a cooperative game where you're taking samurai up against different villains. Every samurai pairs off against a villain and is trying to defeat them. But you only have 10 days or 10 point value worth of cards to play down to get ready, as well as figure out what the villains are up to. At number 43, we have Century Golem Edition. This is a hand management kind of resource manipulation game about getting gems to trade them in to get golems that are going to score you points. Game looks amazing and is very easy and fast to play. Turns go by just like that. And then at number 42, we have another game that looks amazing but is meaner, and that is going to be Calico. This is a brain-burning game as you're trying to create this quilt to attract cats, put buttons on the quilt, and complete scoring objectives, all that give you points. And whoever has the most points at the end wins. A really nice production for a game as well, and a really cute theme of calico quilts and calico cats. Well, some calico cats. Calico quilts and cats. And then at number 41, we have Floorplan. This is another roll and write game about building a house, but you end up building really weird houses based off of what's rolled and the scoring in the game. You might have an amazing house with 6 bedrooms and no kitchen. And that could win you the game. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to the new version about the Winchester Mansion. I'm pretty sure it's Winchester. But that is it. That is the number 50 through 41. Let me know, either in the chat now or in the comments below, which one of these games looks the most interesting to you, which one that you've played do you like the best. Studio Laniston, I know, is a big fan of Marvel United, but let me know that. Based off of this, let me know if there are any games you think I should try. Like, when the full 100 is out, you're going to have a pretty good idea of my tastes in games. So I'm always interested for suggestions for new games to try as well. But thank you everybody for joining today. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. I stream. When I'm not doing the top 100, it is solo gaming of some variety, or every now and again just talking about some board game topic. But if you want to know when I go live, subscribe to the channel, and you can click the notification bell and we'll let you know when I go live. If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing and giving a thumbs up to the video. And there are other links below for other content that I do, such as nerdologist.com website and the 10-Minute Marvel podcast, as well as some other ways you can help support this channel. But normally I sign off with bottoms up and take a drink, but I finished off the drink already. So thank you everybody for joining, and I hope to see you again next Wednesday for 40 through 31.